The wind bit through Elias Thorne's thick wool jacket, a constant nagging reminder of the unforgiving land. He swung his double-bitted axe with a rhythm born of 10 years' practice, each strike a solid, concussive thud against the frozen spruce. Around him, the other loggers were shadows in the dim, perpetual twilight of the Alaskan winter, their breath plumes of vapor that froze instantly on their beards. Elias preferred the cold, silent company of the forest. It didn't ask questions or pry into the past. His past was a ghost he'd left 1,000 miles away, a memory of a life that had turned to ash and regret. All that was left was the work, the brutal, exhausting labor that kept the emptiness at bay. The logging camp wasn't much. A dozen rough-hewn cabins, a cookhouse, and the roar of a small sawmill powered by steam. It was owned by Anya Petrova, a woman as tough and unyielding as the permafrost itself. Her husband, Mikhail, had built the camp with his bare hands, only to be crushed by a falling log a year ago. Now, Anya ran the operation with a grim determination that kept everyone on edge. She was a solitary figure, rarely speaking, her face etched with a grief she tried to hide behind an icy glare. Elias had only exchanged a few words with her in the months he'd been there, mostly about wages or supplies. She was the boss, and he was just another logger, a hired hand with no roots. One evening, as a blizzard began to roll in, swallowing the last light of the day, Elias was tending to his gear in the camp storage shed when Anya appeared. Her silhouette was framed by the swirling snow, and for the first time he noticed a tremor in her hands. "Thorne," she said, her voice strained, "I need you to come with me. Now." He followed her without a word, his boots crunching on the packed snow. She led him not to the cookhouse, but to her own cabin, a larger, more isolated structure near the frozen river. The door was ajar, and a blast of frigid air hit him as they stepped inside. It was colder inside than out. The stove was dead, the fireplace a pile of cold ash. "The chimney is blocked," she said, her teeth chattering. "The storm came in too fast. I can't get it cleared. The other men are too far out in the field to reach them." She gestured to a bedroll on the floor, the only other piece of furniture besides her desk. Her face, usually so stern, was pale and drawn, a thin layer of frost clinging to her eyelashes. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering violently. "The cold will kill me by morning," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "or I'll get so sick I won't be able to run this operation. If I go, this camp goes with me, and every man here is out of a job." Elias stood there watching her, a strange mix of suspicion and unease filling him. This was not the tough, unshakable boss he knew. This was a woman on the edge of collapse. "What do you want me to do?" he asked, his voice low. Her eyes, usually like chipped ice, met his. There was desperation in them, a raw, naked plea. "Lie beside me, Thorne," she said, her voice firming. "Use your body heat to keep me alive." "Or," she took a shaky breath, her gaze hardening, "you're fired. Get your things and get out." Elias stared at her, stunned. The command hung in the frigid air between them, an impossible demand. Was this a test? A bizarre trick? He thought of the long, lonely nights, the bone-deep cold, and the knowledge that if he left, there was nothing waiting for him out there. He had to make a choice. If you're enjoying this story, be sure to hit that subscribe button to catch more tales of survival, conflict, and human connection. The silence in the cabin was thicker than the snow piling up outside. Elias hesitated for a moment longer, then began unbuttoning his jacket. He had no choice. Anya was right. The cold was a greater threat than any man, and without her, this camp, his only source of income, would be a pile of frozen memories by spring. He didn't want to leave. This place, despite its harshness, was the only home he'd known in years. He lay down on the bedroll, a foot or two away from her, and covered himself with his heavy blanket. Anya did the same, not saying a word. The first hour was a study in awkward discomfort. The only sounds were their ragged breaths and the incessant moan of the wind against the cabin walls. Slowly, the heat from their two bodies began to coalesce, a fragile warmth pushing back against the bitter cold. "Mikhail, he was a good man," Anya said finally, her voice hoarse from the cold. "He always knew what to do. He could fix anything, except for this." She gestured vaguely to the room around her. "Running a business. All he left me was this debt and a pile of debts." Elias grunted in response. He wasn't one for small talk, and he certainly wasn't used to hearing a woman talk so candidly about her struggles. "My family, they tried to tell me not to come here with him. They said this place would chew me up and spit me out. Maybe they were right." He turned his head to look at her. The moonlight filtering through the small window showed a single tear tracing a path down her cheek, freezing instantly. "You're still here, aren't you?" he said softly. The simple words seemed to break something in her. She turned her head too, and for the first time he saw her, not as the boss or the widow, but as a person. She told him of her late husband, of their hopes and dreams, of how they had gambled everything on this venture. And then she told him of Jedediah, a rival logger who had been pressuring her to sell the land and the contracts. Elias found himself opening up too, something he hadn't done in years. He told her about his wife and daughter, about the smallpox that had swept through their town, leaving him as the sole survivor. He talked about the guilt he carried, the feeling that he should have done something, anything, to save them. He spoke of the loneliness, a coldness far deeper and more insidious than the one outside the cabin. As the days turned into a week, the blizzard raged on. They were trapped, but the forced proximity had forged an unexpected truce. They talked for hours, not just about their pasts, but about the camp's future. Elias offered suggestions on how to improve the logging efficiency. Anya listened, truly listened, seeing his experience and his innate intelligence for the first time. The lie beside me was no longer a command. It was a silent, mutual understanding. Their nights weren't for warmth alone, but for a shared moment of peace and companionship in a world that offered so little of either. The next day, the wind died down, and they were able to get out. Jedediah, the rival logger, was waiting for them. He stood on the edge of the camp, a cruel smirk on his face, holding a document. "I've just received word," he sneered. "Your contract with the lumber mill has been cancelled. The deadline was yesterday, and you failed to deliver. They've given the contract to me." Anya's face went white. She knew this was a lie, a scheme Jedediah had concocted. But the man was well connected, and if she couldn't prove her deliveries were just delayed by the storm, they were ruined. Jedediah's smirk widened. "Looks like your time here is done, Anya. Now, about that land." Elias stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Jedediah's. The feeling of helplessness he'd felt years ago, the one that had consumed his life, threatened to overwhelm him. But this time, he wasn't alone. Anya was beside him, her hand gripping his sleeve, and a new kind of resolve, born of a shared struggle, hardened his features. Elias and Anya worked through the night, a new urgency driving them. They calculated the exact amount of lumber they had felled, the cost of the trip, and the number of days they had to make up for. Jedediah had indeed pulled a fast one, using his connections to have their delivery contract cancelled just before the storm hit. They were on the verge of losing everything. "We need to get to the mill and prove we were on track," Anya said, her voice raw with sleeplessness. "The only way is by sledge, across the frozen lake. It will take 2 days, if we're lucky, but with the storm, the ice might not be safe." "We'll take 2 teams," Elias said. "One to carry the first load. The other will follow as a backup. We'll mark the ice every few yards, check the thickness. It's a gamble, but it's the only one we have." Jedediah, hearing of their plan, tried to dissuade the other loggers from joining them, warning of the treacherous conditions. But after seeing Elias and Anya working side by side, a few of the men, loyal to Anya, stepped up. Elias and Anya would lead the expedition, leaving their small team of friends to defend the camp. The journey was a brutal test of their newfound bond. They braved treacherous ice, biting winds, and the constant threat of a thin patch giving way. During a break, huddled together against a cliff face, Anya turned to him. "I never thought I'd find anyone I could trust like this again," she said. "Not after what happened to Mikhail." Elias stared into the distance. "I told you about my family, but not the whole truth. I wasn't there when it happened. I was out working, trying to make enough money to bring them out here to the wilderness. I thought I was protecting them, providing for them. Instead, I was gone when they needed me most." His voice cracked with a pain that was still as fresh as a new wound. "I've been running from that ever since." Enya reached out and placed her hand on his. "You can't carry that guilt forever, Elias. You did what you thought was right. Sometimes life just takes things away." The next day they reached the mill, tired and bruised. Anya presented her case to the mill owner, a man named Henderson, while Elias stood quietly beside her. She showed him their production records, the damage the storm had caused, and the notes she had received from Jedediah. Henderson, a man of his word, was impressed by their tenacity. He saw the truth in their eyes. He reinstated the contract, and in a final, defiant act, he gave them a more lucrative one as a reward for their honesty and sheer grit. They returned to the camp as heroes. Jedediah, seeing his scheme unravel, was humiliated and left the area. Anya and Elias walked into her cabin, the silence between them now one of comfort and understanding. The fire was roaring, chasing away the last of the cold. "Well, Elias Thorne," Anya said, a small, genuine smile on her face, "it seems you're no longer fired." He smiled back, a warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with the fire. He looked at her, at the woman who had shared her vulnerability, her grief, and her strength with him. The woman who had, in her own desperate way, given him a reason to fight again. He moved closer to her, and this time he wasn't commanded to lie beside her. He simply chose to. He reached out and took her hand, a silent promise hanging in the air. This was no longer just a logging camp, it was a home. And the lonely logger and the Alaskan widow had found, in the coldest of places, a warmth that would last a lifetime. Thank you so much for watching. If you were moved by this story, please show your support by subscribing to the channel for more stories of human courage and resilience.